Yeah, 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 yeah.
Hi, welcome. My name is Safi, and today we're going to be making some black bean nourish bowls. So the black beans in this recipe are my take on Cuban black beans. So this nourish bowl is really going to be inspired by the Caribbean, which is where I grew up for most of my life. So we're going to have a lot of yummy Caribbean flavors. Um, what I like about this bowl is that you can mix and match whatever you want. This is my take on the bowl. I like the flavors and the combinations, but if you don't like something specific in there, you can change it out with whatever you have. Or maybe you had something that you made, salad or some sort of grain that you made the night before for dinner. You can add that in. It's really customizable, and this is what I really like about this. So, what our bowl is going to consist of is some yummy Caribbean black beans. We're going to make them with these beans here. We're going to have a delicious pickle, quick pickle. If you have time, you can pickle it for longer, but we're going to do a quick pickle that's easy to just, do, set aside, and then you can have it quickly. Also, very Caribbean inspired. We're going to have some plantain platanos, and we're going to do those in the oven, so to use a little bit less oil. And on the side of that, we're going to have a mango salsa, which I think will tie everything in really nicely. Lots of fresh flavors, everything's really colorful, everything's good for you. Oh, and on top of that, we'll have some rice, but you can really choose, adapt it to what you want. So if you don't like rice, if you don't want rice, if you don't have rice, then use quinoa, use couscous, use pearl barley. If you maybe don't want a grain at all, use potatoes, use yam, whatever you want, or leave it out completely and have it on a bed of salad. It's up to you. This is completely customizable. Pick and choose what you want from here, and just customize it to fit you. So let's go over the ingredients quickly. So what I have here is some black beans that I soaked overnight. I just soaked them, rinsed them, picked out all of the stones and all the bad ones that I could find, and soaked them overnight. Because I'm using dried black beans, I highly recommend doing that. But this recipe, you don't have to use dried black beans. I thought, for this demo, I'm gonna do it from scratch completely. But to be perfectly honest, mostly when I make these, I just make them with canned black beans because a lot of the time I can't be bothered to soak them and then cook them up for a long time. And if I really want them quickly and I'm craving them, if I'm very organized, I will soak them, cook them up, and put them in my freezer so that I have them, the fresh ones. There is a slightly better taste, I think, if you do them from scratch like this, but lazy girl sometimes. But yes, so I've soaked these already, left them overnight. We're gonna boil these up. It's gonna take about an hour on the stove, but we'll add lots of aromatics, and that will be the base. And I'll talk you through if you don't do it this way, you're using the cans, I'll talk you through how to do that as well. And then, as I said, we have some plantain that we're gonna do in the oven. We also have some onion, red onion and white onion. The white onion is gonna go in with our black beans. The red onion is gonna go in with our quick pickle, which is gonna be a cabbage pickle. So I just have a white cabbage here. If you wanna use a red cabbage, go ahead, use whatever you have. Leave it out if you don't like cabbage. We also have some carrots that are gonna go into that pickle as well. And as well as some pimento or allspice. So if you can find the pimento berries, then that's perfect. If not, don't worry. If you have allspice, I've never tried it this way before, but I'm sure you could add a little bit of the ground allspice if that's easier for you to find. But ideally you have the berry. If not, just leave it out. put some other aromatics that you like in there, and that will work perfectly fine. What else do we have? So we have some mango, as I said, for our salsa. We have some cilantro or coriander, garlic and ginger. This will go into our beans and into our quick pickle, as well as some lime. We have some scotch bonnets here. Use whichever peppers that you want to use as much spice as you want to use. I like a bit of spice, and I love the flavor that comes with scotch bonnets, so I tend to use scotch bonnets more frequently because it does add quite a different taste. If you can get your hands on scotch bonnets, go ahead and use those. A good alternative would be habaneros. And there are also seasoning peppers, which are harder for me to find, but if you can find those, they don't have the heat that scotch bonnets have, but they do have a lot of that grape flavor. They're really easy to find in the Caribbean, but harder to find in other places, so I'm using scotch bonnets. Okay, so we have some peppers as well. This is gonna go into our aromatics as well as our sofrito, which is the base that we're gonna cook everything up on for our black beans. We have some spring onions, just for that freshness we'll add throughout. And then I suppose the last part is our spices. So we have some bay leaves that are gonna go into our black beans. We also have some cumin, some oregano, some garlic powder, and some paprika, and a vegetable stock cube. If you have fresh stock, go ahead and use that. Use whatever you have on hand. I just have these, so I'm gonna use these bouillon cubes. So the recipe for this spice mix, it's actually an adobo spice mix. It's hard for me to find, so I've just kind of put together my own one. Quick one. If you have turmeric, go ahead and put that in as well. Great. This is all the spice mix for the black beans. Add some turmeric, that's perfect. I don't have any on hand right now, so I'm leaving it out for this recipe. If you have fresh turmeric, even better. Yeah, so this is the spice mix. If you can find adobo, go ahead and use that as well. This is the quantity of spice that I have. It's like half a teaspoon of each one, but really, taste it. Add more. If you think it needs more cumin, go ahead and add more cumin as well. The other things that I'll obviously be adding are a little bit of salt and pepper, maybe a splash of vinegar here and there. I like to use apple cider vinegar, as well as your oil of choice. If you don't like to use oil, it's perfectly fine and easy to just do a lot of this cooking with water. And I will try and do a lot of that as well today. Okay, so let's head over to the stove and we'll get started on our black beans. These definitely take the longest, so we want to get these going. And then while those are going, we can get started on our quick pickle and our plantain and all the other goodies that we're going to put together. So let's get started. Okay, so let's get a pot onto the stove. We're going to add our soaked black beans into the pot. And then what we're going to want to do is add some cold water on top of the black beans, just enough so it reaches about 2 to 3 inches above the black beans. And then we'll just set that up so it starts boiling, and we'll come back to that once it's boiled. So here what I've done is I've gone ahead and chopped half an onion, half a white onion, and half of a green bell pepper. As well as we have our stock cube that we talked about earlier, and 2 bay leaves, some garlic cloves, add as much as you want. So what we're going to do with these is, this is going to go into our boiling black beans. So right now we have the black beans boiling, we're softening them, and what we want to do is impart all the flavors that we have from these aromatics into the black beans. So you want to keep them chunky. You don't want to chop everything too fine, because as it boils for an hour or however long it takes to soften them, all the flavor from these aromatics is going to be imparted into the black beans, and at the end we're actually going to throw away the remaining aromatics because we've gotten all the flavor out of them. If you were doing this with canned black beans, you actually don't do this step. What you will do is you'll use the similar aromatics, but you'll do it with the sofrito, which we're going to do a bit later. That's more of the quick step, so I'll show you how to do that part later if you're using canned black beans. Let's add these in.
Okay, so here we're just going to add all of those aromatics straight into the pot and give it a stir. After that, just put the lid back on and bring it to a rapid boil.
Okay, so the black beans are over there boiling. You might be able to hear them. What we're gonna do is we're gonna boil them rapidly for 10 minutes, and then we'll turn them down to a simmer and let them cook for 1 hour. And then at that point, we'll taste, we'll see if they're soft. Maybe they soften a bit earlier and you can start the process a bit earlier, but if not, you cook them until they're soft, and then we'll start putting everything together to make the final dish. Okay. So in the meantime, why don't we get started on the quick pickle? The longer that sits, the better it will be, the more flavor that we'll impart in those. So yeah, let's get started on that.
So for the pickle, you're going to need a jar. Use any jar. This is the one I have. We're going to get our cabbage. I just halved that, and then I'm going to quarter that again. Use as much cabbage as you think you can fit in your jar. This is what I thought I'd be able to fit. We're just going to finely slice that. There's no rhyme or reason. Slice it as thick or thin as you fancy. Then we'll move on to our red onions. Just slice those thinly as well. I'm going to add 1 scotch bonnet to this pickle. Add as much spice as you want. Then I'm going to peel 1 carrot and slice that into rounds. Add about a centimeter thick slice of ginger and just roughly chop that. And then last but not least is some garlic. Add as many cloves as you like. I'm just going to add a few, but these ones are quite chunky. And for these, I'm just going to take the skin off. No need to chop them.
Okay, so we've chopped all of our veg for our quick pickle. We might not necessarily be able to fit all of that in here, so you're just going to need to get a jar, any sort of jar. This is the one that I had available. Use an old, I don't know, peanut butter jar if you want to, whatever you fancy, whatever you have. Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to start layering in the vegetables. You can choose whatever layer you want, whatever style of layer you want. Just choose a little bit of everything. Be careful with this pepper. Wash your hands straight after you're touching all of this. And don't forget the pimento berries that we're going to use. The other thing that I actually want to add in is some black peppercorns. Not necessary, but I like to add a couple. Black peppercorns, oops. Drop those, and let's continue layering it up.
Okay, so once you've filled your jar, it's time to get started on the pickling liquid. What I'm doing here is just adding some brown sugar. This is totally optional, as well as the salt. You can choose if you want to add this. But what you do need to add is some vinegar. Choose your vinegar of choice. If you want to use apple cider, go ahead. I'm using white today. And what you want to do is fill about halfway of the jar with vinegar. You could do the whole jar with vinegar if you wanted, but today I'm just going to do half just to not make it too potent. And then you're going to want to fill the rest of the jar with water, just fresh water, until you get to the top of the jar. Make sure not to overfill it, because you might spill it once you shut the jar, which is what I did. And that's it. We're just going to let that sit and build the flavors. Okay, so let's take a peek at our black beans and see how they're doing. So just going to want to stir it, test to see how soft they are, make sure nothing's sticking, make sure there's enough liquid still in the pot, and they're looking good. Okay, so while our black beans are still bubbling away, let's get started on the sofrito. You're going to want to use one whole green pepper. I just happen to have 2 halves, so you'll see me doing it in different stages here, but you're going to want to chop them into thick slices. I like mine thick, but actually you could chop it thinner if you wanted to. And then we're going to add 1/2 of an onion, white onion. And you're just going to want to roughly chop that as well. Next, we'll add about a centimeter thick chunk of ginger, and that as well you just roughly chop. You can finely chop it if you want to, but I'm not too fussed. And then we're going to add our chilies and our garlic. You can chop this. I have a garlic press, so I'm not going to finely chop this here. I'm just going to use the press later. We're going to want to use the ends of the coriander here, and we'll use the leaves later for our mango salsa. Here we're also going to want to add in the ends of a green onion, or spring green. And that's everything. Just add this in a bowl ready for when we're going to cook up our sofrito. Okay, so next we're going to get started on our plantain. So preheat your oven to 220 degrees Celsius, and then we'll get chopping our plantain. So ideally you find really ripe plantain. Unfortunately I couldn't find ones that were too ripe so close to this video, so mine are not as ripe as I would like. If they're really ripe, then they come out really nice and soft when you bake them. I tend to find that when you bake them, they do tend to come out a bit harder, so that's why you want to find them soft, and then they just have a nice sweet taste to me. And just chop them however you like. I like to kind of chop them at a slight angle just to increase the surface area a little bit. And I'm only doing 1 plantain today because I know they're not going to turn out as well as I like because they're not as ripe. So I'm going to keep the rest of them to ripen so that I can make them at their peak deliciousness. Okay, just get a baking tray that will fit your plantain. I like to use these baking papers. They're reusable baking papers, but use whatever baking paper you have. I find that these allow me to use a little less oil. And then just lay out your plantain on the baking paper. Next, you're going to want to brush some oil on. I have this little spray oil, but if you have one of those cooking paint brushes, then that's a good thing to use as well, just to avoid adding too much oil to them. And you're just going to want to add oil to both sides. Okay, once you're done oiling them, then we're just going to pop them into the oven. They really aren't going to take long, about 10 to 15 minutes, and we're going to flip them halfway through. Just keep an eye on them and take them out when they look like your desired brownness. While our plantain's in the oven, let's have a look at our black beans. I think they are about done, but let's see if they're the right texture that we want. Okay, they're looking perfectly soft, so now we can get started on our sofrito. So for the sofrito, I'm just using water instead of oil here, but feel free to use oil. And once the water is hot, I'm just going to add all of the ingredients that we chopped up into the pan, except for the coriander stems and the garlic. The garlic, I'm going to use the garlic press to add that in. And I'm only going to add in 1 clove of garlic at this point. The other I'm going to save for right at the end. So if you're using canned black beans, this is where your black bean cooking begins, really. You're going to cook up the sofrito just like I'm doing here. This stage is actually no different whether you're doing canned black beans or dried black beans. Just cook it up until it's translucent and soft. Don't forget to check on your plantain and flip them halfway through. Okay, so our sofrito is done, so we're going to add it into our pot. Now, if you are doing canned black beans, this is where your stage is slightly different. So instead of adding the sofrito into the black beans, you're actually going to add your black beans into your sofrito. So with the canned black beans, you're going to want to add the liquid from the can as well. And then just add your spices in. This stage is completely the same. Add your spices and then fish out any of the aromatics that we put in earlier. And then just taste it for seasoning and see if you need to add a little bit more of your spices. I felt like I needed to add about a teaspoon, or rather half a teaspoon more of each seasoning that made up our adobo spice. But taste it and see what you want. And then just mix that up, and we're going to let that sit and cook for a little bit longer. Right at this point, my plantain was ready to come out of the oven. I just took it out and seasoned it with a little bit of salt. Okay, the last element to do for our bowl is our mango salsa. So just slice up the mango. We're going to chop it into cubes. Slice it however you want. I'm just going to use a paring knife and take all the skin off and then slice it up. Don't forget to get all of the mango off of the seed as well. We don't mess around with wasting any mango in this house. We're just going to put all of that into a bowl, and then we're going to get started on our spring onions. Just going to add a whole spring onion. I had a top half and then a bottom half. We're going to add in the tops of our coriander that we had from before. Just add everything into the bowl. And then 1 chili. This turned out quite potent. I'm taking the seeds out as to not make it too potent, but maybe taste your chili to see how much you want to add in and customize it, as always. Just gonna put everything into the bowl. And then we're just gonna add some lime to this. Just squeeze half a lime all over, and then we're just gonna season it with salt and pepper and mix it up, and that is basically our mango salsa done. Fresh, spicy, sweet, and delicious. So it's been about 5 minutes now since we left our black beans to simmer, so they should be about done, so it's time to finish off the dish. So remember that garlic clove that I left from before? We're just going to add that in now, just to add this fresh garlic hum to the end of the dish. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of apple cider vinegar to this, just to add a balance of flavors. I'm going to taste it, and I felt like it needed a tiny bit of sweetness. Add whatever your sweetener of choice is. I'm adding agave nectar, but add anything. And then just to finish it off, we're just going to smash it down a little bit with a potato smasher. And this is just to make it a bit thicker. And then it's perfect. Don't they look delicious? Okay, so this is done. We can start plating everything up. So I've just added everything to the plate, all of our different elements that we put together. And it just looks so beautiful.
Okay, so we have finished our delicious Caribbean-inspired nourish bowl. And yeah, so let's go over what we made. So we made a quick pickle. I will say with the pickle is it's very sharp. Normally I use apple cider vinegar with this. Like I said, I only have a little bit of apple cider vinegar left, so I decided to use white vinegar. With this though, I would say use half vinegar and half water because it becomes very sharp. But what's so amazing is we made this 2 hours ago, let's say, and already you have the fusion of flavors from the pimento berries. You can taste the spice from the scotch bonnets we added, and then just all the fusion of flavors from the vegetables that we put in there. Really, really delicious, and it just gets better with time. Highly recommend trying this. We made our beautiful Cuban inspired black beans. So good. With the black beans, if you can make them the day before you want to eat them, they will be even better. The flavors just build with us. And it's just such a good one to have as a meal prep. Have it in your fridge. Like I said, put it in your freezer and bring it out when you want to make it. It's delicious. It keeps really well in the fridge. And it's always a hit whenever I make it. We made our mango salsa. So delicious, so fresh. Ties everything in really nicely. And then, of course, our baked plantain. With the plantain, I will say that ideally you make it with really, really ripe plantain, especially because we're baking it. You want to make sure that the plantain is super ripe, and mine just, unfortunately, I couldn't find them that were that ripe so close to making this video, but ideally you use them when they're really ripe, and that way they keep that softness. They do become a little harder when you're baking them. If you don't mind the oil, if you don't mind shallow frying, then go ahead and shallow fry them the way you would make dodo. That's perfectly fine. It's up to you. Like I said, customize this the way you want to do it. You could also do tostones, where you shallow fry them and then crush them down and fry them again. That's also very delicious. Yeah, so shall we give this bowl a little try? I've squeezed over some lime just to build those flavors. Let's see, let's try our black beans are so good. Like I said, they get better the more they sit, so tomorrow they will be even better. This quick pickle. Let's try it. It's fighting me. You can taste the berries, the pimento berries. It adds this like balance, we have the sweetness and the vinegary freshness from the salsa, then you have that sharpness from the pickle with those amazing Caribbean flavors. Then you have the plantain. It is just so good. Mango salsa. It's delicious. I think I added a little bit too much scotch bonnet there, but It is so good because you get this spicy, sweet, vinegary, or not vinegary, but citrusy burst from this salsa. It has so many different layers of flavor within that salsa alone, and it ties everything together really, really nicely. Like I said, this is your bowl, so whatever you want to do with this, if there's something you don't like on here, don't add it, add whatever you want. If there's something that you have already, or there's an idea that you think would be really yummy to bring this together more, add it in, pick and choose. This is so great. You can make all of these things individually, have them, pull them out, and build your bowl as you want it to be. This rice, for example, I had that from dinner last night, so I just put it on with the bowl, but you could add anything you want to. Okay, so thank you so much for watching. I hope you try some of these recipes. Even if you just try a couple of them, they pack so much flavor individually, and you add them together and there's such a great combination. Tag me if you make any of these. I'd love to see your creations at Safi Living on Instagram. And thank you again for watching. Bye.